A lot of business owners are still trying to figure out, is short form content needed? How do I win with it? And is it something that's going to create revenue? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today on Amplify Your Marketing Message. I'm bringing you a really interesting gentleman, someone I really, really respect, to talk about creating short form content as a strategy for business owners who are serving other business owners to grow their business. Please give a very warm welcome to Mr. Matt Stait. Super excited to be coming international to you this morning by somebody who has a lot of expertise in short form content. Matt, welcome to the show.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me on.
Okay, so when we talk about short form content, a lot of people are like, what is that? So I'm going to say originally it used to be things like we would say TikTok or Reels, or now even YouTube has got into YouTube Shorts. And rumor has it, there's another new platform about to be launched by Meta. So I want to talk about short form content because it's a huge passion of yours. You've learned a ton about it. You're going to bring a huge amount of value to us today. Why short form content, and why is it something business owners are just going, ooh, isn't that for other people, not for business? Talk to us a little bit about it at the beginning.
Okay, well, there's quite a lot in that, in what you've just said. So it's probably better to start right from the beginning and say, how do we define short form content? So essentially, it's anything that's under 3 minutes. Usually now we're talking vertical as opposed to landscape because it's mobile led. So we're looking at vertical video content under 3 minutes. That's essentially short form in itself. Now, all the platforms have seen the power in this and they're all doing their own version of this. So obviously TikTok was the one that sort of ran with the ball for a few years and really got a good start on that, but it built so well and so quickly that all the other platforms took a look at it and thought, well, we need to do something about that. So they've started their own version of. So you have Facebook Reels, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts has come online now as well in the past year or so. So it's a great opportunity for us to be able to leverage that and get our message out and get it shared organically because the platforms want the content. They're competing with one another and vying for our attention. So as long as we give the platforms what it is that they need, it's a great opportunity for us as businesses to leverage this particular situation at this point in time.
This is an interesting conversation, and I love that you say it. First off, be aware, guys, short form content isn't just 15 or 30 seconds. Matt's saying it's actually all the way up to 3 minutes. And 3 minutes is actually quite a long time to get a message across. And I love that you're thinking about go where the market is, because you're saying the platforms themselves want eyeballs. We know that. We're actually the product when it comes to social media, and they want eyeballs. So they're going to promote, prioritize, and really be the engine to help you reach audiences. And we've talked about a lot here on this program. One of the biggest priorities, and I would argue the biggest, is to build an audience of buyers. And where they are and going to where they are is the fastest path to cash. So take advantage of the fact. And even if TikTok doesn't stay in the US market, and we know there's lots of speculation going around, well, what will that bring? Short form content is an essential part of your plan. So let's talk about what makes short form content for business owners a good strategy, and how do you do it? What do you think it needs to have?
Well, firstly, again, when we talk about short form content, we have to appreciate that it takes up about 90% of all internet traffic now. So the communication, the conversation is heavily geared towards short form content and short form video specifically. So when we look at that, if we want to engage with an audience, if we want to build a community, if we want to actually be part of an ongoing conversation, then we need to be where those conversations are. And that's really where the short form comes into its own in regards to this, because that is how people are communicating now. It's they've done lots of tests and things on this, and the statistics reflect it, that essentially it's the older generation, the boomers and the late Gen Xers. They're the kind of people that reach for the long form content first. Everybody else is straight into short form, and then it builds out from there. So when we're looking at that, that's really how we want to approach it and say, well, it's a bit like now saying, well, I'm not going to use the phone. I'm going to still insist on a carrier pigeon because that's kind of what I'm comfortable with, So we have to get comfortable with the new ways of communicating. We have to learn those skill sets. And like you said, regardless of what happens to the platform. Obviously, TikTok at the moment in the US is it's up for quite a big discussion there.
Mhm.
But even if TikTok doesn't exist tomorrow, right, in certain areas of the world, the skill set that you acquire does, and more importantly, those viewers, those followers, those consumers, those people on those platforms are going to want to put their time somewhere else. So all of those skills that you've built and all of that understanding of how to build communities, that can then be projected onto whatever takes its place, because something will. There's no question about that.
I love that. I think there was such a gold nugget here. I want to pull it out for our audience here. And that is, the skill will evolve. Short form content is 90% of the eyeballs right now on social media. This is an essential part of your path. And so the sooner that you start to get your head around, how do I play here and how do I build my capabilities, you haven't missed the boat. I think
No,
that's an important thing, because I think when TikTok started to be so up for question marks in the US market, which the world is watching, a lot of people said, I don't need to play here. And what I'm hearing really loudly is, not playing here has big consequences for your long term. And you need to recognize that your demographics of who you're serving might not start in short form content, but all of us have got the habit that if we have 5 minutes, we scroll. And so learning to be effective in a short form content where it is more important than ever to stop the scroll, it is time to jump in and start to acquire those skills. So when you're working with clients, because you've really honed what it is to be effective on short form content, where do you start? What are some things we need to understand to be able to shorten the path and disrupt that scroll?
Okay, well, if I can just track back just a little bit on that, because there's lots of things that can be discussed out of everything that you say, and I just want to pull back a little bit and say, fundamentally, when it comes to short form video, it's the most shared form of content now, even if we're not on the platform. So even if you've never been on TikTok ever, I'm pretty certain that somewhere across your platforms, you've seen a TikTok video, because they're so incredibly shareable. Now, when it comes to organic growth, when it comes to marketing, when it comes to being able to promote what it is you do, having the ability to have that electronic word of mouth where thousands of people will share your content for free to their communities, it's such a powerful tool. So I wanted to impress on that, because that's sort of really important in what we do. So that brings me on to what you just asked there with regards to some tips and things. So fundamentally, we want to make sure we're giving lots and lots of value in what we do. That's that should be a given anyway, but
It should be, but it's not. Please make sure you heard that. Value first.
Absolutely. So it's very much worth saying that. So we need to start with a good hook, right? We need to give people a reason to stop. So those first couple of seconds are sort of critical, if you like, in regards to getting somebody's attention. We don't live in a world anymore where people are polite enough to just stop and listen because we want to say something. Those days of, excuse me, can I talk to you for a moment, are long gone. People are now just going to go, nope, too busy, off, right? So we need to be able to stop that scroll first and foremost. Then we need to give them a promise. What are they going to get from this? What's going to be in it for them? Because that's the fundamental question. No matter what we think we're actually saying, we're all doing the same thing. What's in it for me? What are you going to give me? What can I get from it, right? So we need to give that sort of value proposition. Obviously, we need to make it interesting, and we need to make it, and I'm not going to use the word authentic because it's been overdone in the past few years. But we need to make it our own. We need to put some kind of stamp on it that speaks our message, that delivers our point of view, the way that we are. So we don't want to be vanilla. And I know some people say, "Oh, well, you don't want to purposely upset people." That's not what I mean. We definitely don't want to do that. But we want to make sure that whatever our content is, it's got a personality and it speaks for us, because that's what's going out into the world. And when you think about it, it's amazing to think about that pieces of content can be shared hundreds of thousands, even millions of times. And there's all those little yous going out in the world, which is quite mind-blowing. So we want to make sure that whatever we're putting out has that shareability factor, has that value in it, that people want to say, hey, let me show you this because you're going to really like it. You're going to get a lot from it, right? And that way then everyone else is doing the hard work for you.
I think this is such an interesting thing, and it's true. I have my husband who is a huge fan of reels. He will never create one in his lifetime, but boy, does he watch a lot of them. And they're right. It's shareables, because it wouldn't be unusual to get a reel shared across my phone simply because he's watching content, he's consuming it, and he's perpetuating new eyeballs.
Yeah.
I love what you're talking about here, which is it is about thinking intentionally. If someone is going to share this, what do I want them to see? What's the unique spin I have on this? And this is something I work with my clients a lot on, which is, you are for a certain audience. You've got to own you. And authenticity is really overused. I heard a great expression last week at a summit I was speaking on, which was be naked in your authenticity, which means you've got to speak like you. You've got to be like you. You've got to sound like you, because if you're not, we have a trust break. And it's really easy to get robotic and vanilla, and then you're lost in the sea of sameness, and it won't be shareable content. And I also love that you led with value first, because while you must entertain, the reason people share it hopefully isn't just entertainment. Especially in the B2B space, it's you need this. So what? It's something that I think is such an important thing. So what has been the biggest lesson that you've personally learned about short form content that our audience should know?
Well, for me, one of the most interesting facts was there is a genuine hunger for information and knowledge-based content. And when I first started looking into this, and we're going back a number of years now, when TikTok first sort of started coming to people's attention, and there was this huge misconception that it was all about dancing and lip syncing and making a fool of yourself and things. And that's not actually the case. I mean, obviously, there's a large proportion of that for people that want to do it, but there's also lots and lots of other people on there giving huge amounts of value and knowledge. And there's all kinds of science and information and technical stuff and teaching things and just massive amounts of things that are outside of that just pure amusement, if you will. And that was something that I found incredibly fascinating and became my sort of point of leverage, if you will, because obviously, as you can tell, I'm not a teenager. I'm not somebody that's particularly comfortable swanning around in next to no clothing and dancing. So that was never going to be my stick. So for me, it was all about connecting with an audience and delivering information. And so that's where I built from that. And that's kind of predominantly how I work with my clients and the businesses that I'm involved with, because we're going into it with that proposition of, well, we're coming in with knowledge, we're coming in with lessons to learn, we're coming in with a product, service, or something, or information. That's the value. That's where we're going to sit, and that's what we're going to share. So I mean, the way that I tend to look at it now is, if you think about somebody starting out writing a blog and wanting to become the authority in their space by blog writing, they would be looking at things like SEO. They'd be looking at sort of silo building so that they grow that topical authority, so they become the go-to person in that space. And what I've basically learned is that you can achieve exactly the same thing with short form content by following some of similar principles. So that silo principle, that's a very powerful thing that can be done with content. So when you look at that, you can start owning that space. So whatever it is, whether you're a music teacher, a driving instructor, a stand-up comedian, it really doesn't matter, but you can own that space by taking all that topical authority, bring it all together in your content. And so you've got all of these hits, all of these reasons for people to come back and listen to what you've got to say.
I think this is interesting, and this leads to the conversation about content, and I mean the lifestyle, or the lifespan rather, of content. Because one of the things that we often think about in short form content is its consumability. So we're talking up to 3 minutes, but it is fast consumed, shared immediately, and not generally parked for I'll get to that one day stage, which sometimes long form content can do. But you actually believe that short form content can play a role in evergreen and be not just something that you're constantly in the churn of creation. And I think this is one of the things B2B business owners fear about short form content, is that they're going to get on the content generating hamster wheel and feel like every day it must be new, every day it must be constantly feeding this engine. And that's one of the reasons I think most businesses shy away from this. But let's talk about the evergreen and how this can play an integrating role to your longer message? Talk to us about
Well, first and foremost, YouTube is a library of content. Simple as
that.
that, right? But that until recently was predominantly longer form. But that stays in the ether forever. And as long as there's people searching for that particular type of content, there's the possibility for it to be found, shared, talked about, consumed, and everything else. The same applies. TikTok is now a library of content. Okay? Reels is now a library of content, and all of those things, they can sit within your profile. And more importantly, when I talked about the taking that topical authority a moment ago, if somebody comes onto something that you've done that's a small 15, 30-second clip and they enjoy it, almost without question, they're going to say, hey, I'm enjoying this. What else have they got? And they will then go to your profile and they will then hopefully start looking through your back catalogue of things. And how you manage that and how you set that up, again, can have quite a lot of sway as to how long somebody spends in the back end of your profile having a route round. It depends on, what they're interested in, how easy it is for them to find, how you hashtag things. All of these things have relevancy, because if the right people can't find them, then it is going to die a death. However, if it's done correctly, and this is a little bit more complicated, but essentially, if you think about being a 5-year-old at a big football game, okay, and something happens and the crowd roars, but nobody's going to hear that 5-year-old. It's just drowned out in the noise, and that's really where we start having to think about our SEO within the things that we're saying, but our hashtagging as well, because we want to be able to grow through the different ponds. So if you've heard the phrase big fish in a small pond, that's kind of where we want to be at every level. So when you think about first putting out a piece of content, it goes out to a few hundred people, depending on how many followers, depending on how prolific you are, depending on how much trust you've built with the platforms, will depend on those first couple of circles that it goes out. Normally it's a few hundred, occasionally a few thousand, never really more than that at that test point. Okay. And then as long as it does well, then it will grow and it will go out to the next and the next and the next. So when you talk about virality in videos, what you're looking at is you've got to be able to jump and leapfrog through these ponds. And that's where the hashtagging comes in, because if you go in with a really strong hashtag and let's just say health, wealth, or happiness, because those are things that we're all aware of and they encompass everything. But if you look at those, all of those search terms will be in the millions, in the billions, in fact, quite high billions in some cases. So you've got no chance of being heard at all. And so you need to hashtag correctly so that you can go through those stages and create that virality in the content that you produce. I mean, I've got videos in the millions out there that are still getting thousands of views every day, tens of thousands in some cases, and still bringing in people communicating me with for the first time, people looking to connect with me for the first time. So that's things that I put up in some cases 5-6 years ago now.
I think there's such an important content. 2 words I heard there were really so important for everybody in our audience. You are, with your content strategy, you are always building a catalog for people to go visit. And I will tell you, not everyone's ready to buy today. Not everyone sees it's relevant today, but if they find you in a moment and you do not control the sequence, it can be all over the place, but you have this catalog now, what happens is people will start to binge. And that's a habit. And it's like, tell me more, tell me more. And this is the point why I say start now. This is not a platform or a methodology that's going anywhere. Every little bit you create now continues the story. And I know all of us who want to have this, great ecosystem built want to do it in a nanosecond, but the journey is important. Like, I think one of the most things that makes you relatable is some of the earlier content. You're saying, I'm learning like you. You must learn your craft and recognize that library, people need to see the journey. They need to see the humanness. And I'll also love what you said, which is, when you are using the big terms, just remember you've got to have really big guns, and that means a lot of money to win that numbers game. But if you think about your strategy as people are looking for specialists, get into that deep end, you will start to be the person they find. And if you are the person find, they leads you to the catalog, it leads you to the binge watching, it leads you to the tell me more. That's the win we're looking for. So it's been fabulous having you here. I'm lit up now, and I'm really, since we first met, I'm starting to put more short form content into my business because I've heard that. I learned the lesson, and I hope all of our audience here on Amplify Your Marketing Message hear it too. You're a business owner, so I always ask all of my people in the hot seat, Amplify what's working for you right now as a business owner. What's helping you build momentum, get your message out there, and build your client base?
It's an interesting one, that, because fundamentally what I do is what works for me, and it may not work for everybody. And that's kind of it's finding out what it is that works for you and then sort of doubling down on that, isn't it? That's kind of
Mhm.
where we are. So that's how I got into short form in the first place, because I started doing it. I found that it was working well for me, and then the more I went into that, the more that actually applied. So for me, it's a case of being consistent on the things that matter. It's very easy to get sort of drawn off into doing things that aren't really going to make you go much further down the road, and you're stuck in sort of today jobs that you just have to do. But it's really important to be focused on setting things up for the future, compounding that. So when we talk about content creation, I'm not just thinking about putting something out today because of the grind. I'm thinking about building assets, building stock, building relationships that are going on 24 hours a day all around the world, without my actual input. By the time somebody connects with me, for the most part, they already have a relationship with me because they've been consuming content. And so that for me is what's really, really working, is thinking about building those assets and building that library and having that out into the world doing the hard work for me.
I think that is absolutely brilliant. I hope it inspires you, audience. Matt, how do people find you to learn more about the work that you do?
Well, the easiest would be to go to my website, which is www.differentthink.co.uk, which is on the screen there, or you can just put Matt State into LinkedIn or Facebook, and you can find me that way.
It has been fantastic. I hope you all encourage you to go and connect to Matt. Follow what he's all about, because this is about this program, Amplify Your Marketing Message, bringing experts into the platform to talk about how do you reach more people. We're all in the sequence of building more impact, building more momentum in our business. Thank you for being our guest today. Everyone, please be sure you subscribe. Be back to our next episode next week. And until then, you will find in the show notes ability to connect to Matt, to connect to us. Go out there, make an impact, and amplify your marketing message. We'll see you all on our next episode.